I want to start off the show by looking at systemic issues within the Australian media environment and talk about why I'm worried about where these issues will take us in coming years. To do that, we need to take a look at this week's speeches by Tame and Brittany Higgins at the National Press Club.
I was raped on a couch in what I thought was the safest and most secure building in Australia. In a workplace that has a police and security presence 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
When we act with integrity, we set a more esteemed bar for those who take our place. In any event, I would rather go down as a disappointment to an institution than sell out as a pandering political puppet to the corrupt forces that coercively control it.
Now, both of these women are clearly exceptionally intelligent, and with Tame, she's doing great work challenging some of the more absurd aspects of the law. She spent 2 years fighting the Tasmanian legal system for the right to talk publicly about the fact that she was raped in Year 10 by her teacher. He was guilty and had been convicted, but she was muzzled. It is the epitome of bureaucratic absurdity left behind by some incompetent, overzealous lawmaker. That aspect of policy needs to be challenged by brave people. And I don't even mind that both Tame and Brittany Higgins are clearly politically pointed in their criticisms.
What bothered me most about the whole imagine if it were our daughter's spiel wasn't that he necessarily needed his wife's advice to help contextualise my rape in a way that mattered to him personally. All he could do, and that's how he realised it was a bad thing. I didn't want his sympathy as a father. I wanted him to use his power as Prime Minister.
You've both made it clear of your disapproval of Scott Morrison's handling of this particular issue. Is there anything that you specifically think Anthony Albanese would do better? And what would it mean if Australians chose to vote Scott Morrison back in?
All Anthony would have to do is none of the things that Scott's done.
My gripe is how the media took this story and played it politically and pointed the issue at a government in which they oppose ideologically. In the case of Brittany Higgins, there is also a very important detail the media appears to have completely forgotten in their reporting of her allegations. The accused has denied the rape occurred, denied that he even had sex with her, and has pleaded not guilty, and the matter is set for court in June. Now, all reporters know the rules and limitations about discussing a matter before the courts, and what we witnessed this week was seasoned journalists picking up that principle and throwing it in the bin. Bruce Lehman, the accused, may or may not be guilty, but at this stage, we don't know. He is still entitled to a trial before the media attempts to shut this case before we can even hear the evidence. And while I expected this approach from those in the media, including those such as Laura Tingle or Lisa Wilkinson, one of the biggest surprises came from the other side of politics. Prime Minister Scott Morrison trampled over the judicial process by weighing into issues currently before the court.
I want to acknowledge Ms Brittany Higgins, whose experience and, more importantly, courage is the reason why we are all here today, and I want to thank her for that. I am sorry. We are sorry. I'm sorry to Ms Higgins for the terrible things that took place here. And the place that should have been a place of safety and contribution turned out to be a nightmare.
You have to paint his words with the context of non-stop media attacks that have pressured him to this point. Those words are only appropriate once the court has convicted. Any sooner, and you actually risk destroying the chance that all parties have at a fair trial. And it wasn't long until Lehman's lawyers predictably set the groundwork for the argument that due to the bias from our Prime Minister and the media, that his client could never get a fair trial. His lawyer released a statement saying a fair trial, free of the interference, grandstanding and other improprieties of late is what the community, Miss Higgins and the accused is owed. The likelihood of this occurring seems to diminish by the hour. Mr. Learman voluntarily provided a lengthy interview with the investigating police and has followed every protocol asked of him since. My client has, from the outset, denied not only the alleged assault, but also that any sexual activity of any kind ever took place. In this country, we do not convict people through the media. And for the Prime Minister to capitulate to the pressure from journalist activists and play this ridiculous game shows that he is barely treading water. Well, let's bring in the panel. I'm joined by senior reporter Caroline Marcus and the Australian's media writer, Sophie Ellsworth. Sophie, let's start with you. What have you made of the way that the media has covered this issue, and more specifically, some of the headlines that came out of the press club this week?
Jack, I was very, very concerned with, firstly, the behaviour of some of the journalists at the press club seeming to take sides here with Miss Tame and Miss Higgins. Now, they should be there as impartial reporters reporting on what they are presenting as those speeches that they directed to the crowd there. But we heard cheering, we heard clapping. Now, in fairness, it wasn't coming from all the journalists in the room. But what also concerns me as well with this whole issue that we've had before us in the past 12 months or so is also that Scott Morrison made that speech and that he actually came out and apologised to Miss Higgins, which is incredibly concerning given this case is yet to go to trial, as you said, Jack. And in the Australian today, Chris Merritt wrote a very good piece saying that the Prime Minister could have inadvertently interfered with the judicial process here, which is so concerning. The accused here needs a fair trial. We need to see what happens in court. But we seem to have both the media and politicians taking teams here. And I think that is so concerning and is something that should not be happening.
Very good point. And Caroline, thanks for joining us. You've covered a lot of court in your time as a journalist. There are rules, and we might not like those rules as journalists, but we appear to be venturing into this strange area where we're arbitrarily throwing out what rules we want to cover as journalists based on how we feel personally as an issue.
I think that's the danger, Jack, of some of these movements like Me Too and locally the March for Justice, which Brittany Higgins was part of as well, in that it just throws out the whole principle and foundation of our justice system, which is someone is innocent until proven guilty. In these cases where there is a male accused and a female alleged victim, it seems to be the very opposite at work. And we've seen it a number of times, especially when it involves someone from the conservative side of politics. For example, Christian Porter, with allegations and accusations that were historical and no reasonable person could argue could have been proved at this stage, with the accuser dead as well. It seems that there's just this urge for certain segments of the media and activists to want to find that person guilty out of a fear that perhaps the courts won't do so. So it serves their agenda better. In this case, I worry because I think that it overshadows and it will also potentially backfire. I mean, surely the accused in Brittany Higgins' case, her defence team must be throwing a champagne party upon hearing all of these headlines and the apology from the Prime Minister, because I don't see how it can't be construed as contempt of court or sub judice. It could be arguably prejudicing the trial.
And that has happened. This isn't something which is like a far-fetched possibility. And courts are really struggling how to factor in social media. We know jurors, when they play on their phones, they can topple entire court cases. So we need to be really careful in how we speak about things when it's still before the courts. Really good point.